Okay, so good morning, everyone. Today I want to talk about a subject that I think is really relevant in an environment where we as business owners need to be self-directed. Uh, we notice as we look around that we celebrated this year the 45-year anniversary of NICAN, a great legacy, especially when we consider that the only way that we have ever promoted our business is through word of mouth. That's an insane concept, isn't it? Especially when you look today at how word of mouth can make or break a person or a business real fast. I was observing just yesterday how one of my children's favorite TV shows had a main character that was fired yesterday from something that they said on Twitter back in 2012. It's not the first time we've seen that happen, is it? But we certainly see in this world of free speech, we certainly see an environment where that can compromise you pretty quickly if you get it wrong. But here in NICAN, 45 years on, we're doing great. We've got lots of new products being launched. We've got new incentives that are always being put on the table, and an exciting opportunity. But we also see a varying degree of response to those opportunities that determines people's ability to fully engage and enjoy or not. Do you want to have a bigger piece of the pie? That's my question for you today. Do you want to be able to take a greater sense of ownership of your business and have a greater influence on your team? I think that's really critical. Importantly, in line with that is this question. We often focus on, in order to build our business, we need to be able to recruit new distributors, and we need to sell to more customers. But the third point that doesn't always get the same attention is really critical. And that is, of course, having the ability to build a club or a team that people want to belong to. Can we lead others? That principle of leadership is really critical in our ability to succeed in this business. So I want to talk about an important subject, that subject being self-leadership. What does self-leadership mean? And critically, why is it so important? So for context, what is self-leadership? I want to give you some understanding first about the value of this. A man by the name of Bill Hybels said, the toughest management challenge is always yourself. I find that a remarkable and frustratingly true principle. As I look at all of the leadership challenges that I've had in my career, it's fascinating to realize that the biggest challenge in leadership is us. Wouldn't you find that to be true? Of all the different complexities that we get confronted with in dealing with human nature and organizational management, which we all have as team leaders, the biggest challenge is us, knowing really how best to manage ourselves so that we can respond appropriately in those situations. Dee Hock said this: we should invest 50% of our leadership amperage in self-leadership, and the remaining 50% should be divided into leading down, leading up, and leading laterally. But 50% of our time should be spent in our own leadership amperage or strength. Yeah. And then finally, Chris Lowney said this: if you want your team to perform heroically, be a hero yourself. So we see self-leadership, self-government, self-direction is something that is really critical for our own success in business, especially in a home-based business like we operate. So I want to define what self-leadership is and break it into 4 sections. And you'll notice that there is an even split in focus on self and focus on others in the way that we understand what self-leadership is. So the first part is self-awareness. And that, by definition, is the ability to acknowledge, understand, and be conscious of one's own values, perspectives, strengths and weaknesses, and our leadership propensity and emotional needs. That's a lot of self-awareness, isn't it? I'll say that again. It's an ability to acknowledge and understand and be conscious of our own values, perspectives, strengths and weaknesses, our leadership propensity, and emotional needs. As I go through these 4 points, I want you to think for a moment on yourself. Have a moment here of self-reflection. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself in each of these 4 areas? How aware would you say you are currently of your own values, your own strengths and weaknesses, your own leadership tendencies? Do you even know what your leadership tendencies look like? What are your emotional needs? Are you aware of what they are? And are you aware of how you respond to them? These are good questions to be asking, aren't they? And I'll share with you as we go why these types of questions are so critical for us to have answers on. So, point number 2 in what is self-leadership? It is also self-management. Self-management means it's our ability to nurture and harness our own passions, abilities, emotions, and leadership capacity in decision-making. I like that. This is a critical point here because so often we need to be able to make good decisions or great decisions based on what is right versus what is emotionally pulling us in a certain direction. One of the challenges that I've seen many people face in leadership is their inability to make great decisions because they let their own emotions get in the way and interfere. Have you seen that happen? A good decision lies in front of someone and they make the wrong choice because their ego gets in the way or their emotions get in the way and interfere with doing what is right, or perhaps more specifically, what is best. The challenge that we face most of the time isn't between what's right and wrong. It's between what's better and what's best. Yeah. So we want to make sure that we have the ability to set aside our own tendency to prioritize our emotions, our passions, bridle them, and do what's best for the greater good versus what serves me best in the moment. So Yoko, yeah, please repeat number 2. It is self-management. Self-management. So the first one, self-awareness. The second one, self-management. We're aware of our emotions. We're aware of our passions. We're aware of our perspectives, our values, our strengths and weaknesses. Self-management means that we can harness that and critically harness it in the direction of our decision-making ability. Yeah. So that we don't compromise outcomes by letting our passions and emotions interfere. Too many times I've seen this. It's just so frustrating when someone is in a leadership position and they compromise the greater good because they can't harness and control their own emotions. So frustrating. But that's a critical virtue of strong leadership. And it starts, as you can see there, with self-leadership, doesn't it? We've got to be able to govern ourselves first if we expect to govern others well. Yeah, it's really critical. So now to move to the second section of defining self-leadership. The first part, self-awareness, self-management. The second one, other awareness, that being a hyphenated singular word there, other awareness, meaning that's the ability now for us to acknowledge and recognize the passions, gifts, strengths, weaknesses, the potential and the needs of others in our team. Do we recognize that? Do we see that? Do we give value to that? And this is really important, of course, in a team where we are encouraging everyone to be self-directed learners, self-directed leaders, and owners and managers of their own business. But at the same time, feel a part of a team and a community. Because what is Nikken all about? We're a global wellness community. And that community doesn't exist in chaos or anarchy. It exists with structure and form and shape, with leaders and teams and organizations within it to help it to grow and expand and reach its full potential. That means those that are leaders, and by the way, when I say leaders, I'm not referring to Diamond or Royal Diamond. Yeah, we want to strive for that for the sake of compensation plan benefit. Yeah, that's a key indicator there. But a silver, a direct, an executive can be a leader. They're the leader of themselves. They're the leader of, and they're future leaders of the business. Okay, and they can certainly be influencers. Okay, so it's critical to recognize when I talk about leadership, it's who we are, who we are. And as that becomes more full and robust within us, that will be reflected outwards in the activities that we engage in NECAN. So other awareness is recognizing the values and the strengths and the potential and the weaknesses as well of others in our business. So I want to ask a question. Again, on a scale of 1 to 10, and I hope we're applying this to all of these 4 metrics here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you know your team members? One of the challenges that we face, I think, in NECAN is we know each other well. We've worked together for years, but how well have we invested ourselves in truly getting to know each other professionally? We might know each other socially, emotionally, and we catch up as teammates and friends and NECAN family members. We know and love each other. We've seen each other's kids grow up and what have you. But have we taken the time as team leaders or as self-leaders to recognize the strengths, the business strengths and weaknesses of each person in our group? Do we understand what their potential is? Do we see that in them? Sometimes, and I think one of the great responsibilities of leadership is to see the potential in others when they, especially when they don't see it in themselves. Yeah. Because our task is to bring that out in them, isn't it? And to help that come alive. I've asked this question in every country that I've visited. I've visited 30 countries now on business assignments, speaking to audiences small and large. And I've asked this at every country, and I've done it deliberately so that I can share this statement with you, because I believed it, and then I hypothesized, and then I tested it in the field and got the confirming answer over and over again. All the time, I would be told, Ben, if we just had this one product, if we just had this one tool, if we just had this one function, if prices were this instead of that, if we had this function on the website, then I could build my business, then I could get what I wanted to do. And I would have that all the time when I was in the office. And I started to ask this question. I started to make this statement. The biggest barrier to our success is our belief in ourselves. True or false? And I would always get, in every country that I was in, 100% unanimous agreement that the biggest barrier to my success is me, my belief in me. So what happens when my belief in me is not good enough? It's hard to change a belief, isn't it? Even if cognitively we go, I know that this belief is wrong. I've got tons of broken beliefs, frustratingly. Yeah, I can be an all or nothing person. I can discount the positives and focus on the negatives if I've dropped the ball and go, right, and beat myself up. That's a negative belief. I can be very self-critical and be a perfectionist. Perfectionism isn't a virtue. It can be quite a vice, yeah? So we can all have these negative beliefs, but to cognitively recognize it is one thing, but to actually change a belief is hard. How do I change that if I believe it to be true? It's hard to do that, isn't it? It's not easy. So where do we start if my belief in myself is compromised? Well, that's where self-leadership kicks in, because we believe in others and we see their potential even when, and especially when, they don't see it in themselves. And that way, that's really important to empower our teams. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how cognizant are you of the strengths and weaknesses, the potentialities, and the dreams and ambitions and aspirations and needs of your teammates? Are we aware of that? And that critically leads to the 4th point, which is other management. Again, hyphenated single word there. Self-awareness, self-management, other awareness, other management. Other management is our ability to motivate and to grow other people, to develop them to their potential, not to our potential, not to someone else's, to their potential, and to help them in fulfilling the organization's objectives and purpose. That's important that they have the two there. We want to help them achieve their own personal goals, but also contribute to the collective. That assumes something really important. It assumes that as a collective, we have a shared sense of purpose that is clear and well articulated and understood. Do we know what we're all about? Are we all clear on what we're chasing, what we're striving for as an organization? I have to confess, when I thought on this, I thought maybe we need to be a little clearer here. Could we all articulate it? I'm confident. Unfortunately, this may need to be next week's subject. I'm confident, unfortunately, that if I was to ask what are our organization's objectives and purpose right now as a team, we've got 30 people on the call right now. I think we'd probably have 30 different answers. They may have some commonality, but that would only be, unfortunately, because we're sharing ambiguous response. Yeah. So we'd talk philosophically versus practically, specifically. And when we deal in specifics, we rarely have a failure. When we deal in ambiguity, we'll rarely have success. So I think I've come to a realization here as I've been preparing for this message that we need to get tighter as a team on knowing what we are collectively working for. It needs to be so big that we all feel a part of something great and magnificent, that makes us proud to be a part of it, that makes it attractive for other people to share and join and be a part of. But at the same time, it needs to be clear enough that I can go as a participant in the collective, I can become the best version of me here. I can achieve my own goals and dreams here. And we want to be able to give people the chance to do both, because what we know to be true is it's not just about inspiring people to a great cause. We cannot inspire people to a better cause, a better way, if we don't have engagement in it. Shared purpose. Purpose is great. Shared purpose is even better. And that's what we need to have, a sense of shared purpose in what we're doing. Okay, so that's something that I think collectively we need to work on. But again, on a scale of 1 to 10, as you look at your teammates, the people that you work with, what is your current ability on a scale of 1 to 10 in regards to being able to motivate and grow people in your team in order to develop their true potential? And of course, to work towards the bigger, greater good. Okay, so that's the 4 points: self-awareness, self-management, other awareness, other management. Now, why is this so important? I think as we've been going, you may have already drawn some of your own conclusions and going, gosh, there's some real value here that I could get in getting better in some of these 4 points. And maybe you're identifying some personal individual benefits that could come from being focused on this a little better. But there are some critical benefits that I think collectively we experience. The first is we learn to appreciate others differently and better. When we know ourselves, when we truly know ourselves, then our strengths and weakness, and not just ourselves, I'm talking in the context of our strengths and weaknesses, our values and what have you, it puts us in a position where we can better understand others. If you really want to understand others, it always starts with understanding self first. If we've never really been great at self-examination, how can we truly, through a lens of honesty and clarity, see another person if we've never taken a good look at ourselves? We won't do that effectively, will we? So because self-leaders are anchored by an appreciation of their own dignity, that gives them then the capacity and the ability to develop an appreciation of the aspirations, the potential, the strengths and weaknesses, and the dignity of others. But it starts with understanding self first. This means they then know how to transform the way others look, or the way they look at others. So if we want to be able to view people in the best light, which is critical in our business, because this is a people business and leadership is essentially a people thing, isn't it? When we talk about humans being more, at the heart of that concept is self-leadership. It's our ability and capacity to discover ourselves best, to be anchored, like I said, in our own dignity, and as a consequence of that, have a clearer lens through which we see the world and others. And as a result of that, we're then empowered to see the world in a better way. And what happens when we see it in a better way? We appreciate it differently. Yeah, so it's really important. That's a critical concept, that, isn't it? That appreciation of others begins with learning to appreciate ourselves. So critical. In fact, I've got a book on this. You may or may not have read it or come across it. It's called Leadership and Self-Development. When I say I've got a book on this, I'm talking about this specific subject, not of self-leadership, but this nuance, this tiny sliver of this concept, which is, as we learn to appreciate ourselves, we learn to see others differently. How to see others differently as a leader. That book is called Leadership and Self-Deception. It's by the Arbinger Institute. A great book. It's a small read, and it's a very comfortable read, but a profound concept that thinking outside the box as a leader is more about seeing people as people versus people as things. Yeah, someone that has to meet an objective or a need for me. They have a job title or a function, and I see them as a thing. Yeah, and shifting outside of that way that so many leaders do. They treat their people as things and start treating them and appreciating them and valuing them, seeing them as people. And the transformational experience that can have on our own leadership. That one little sliver of the subject. There's a whole book written on it, right? It's crazy. So a critical point. The other point as well, the other critical benefit here that comes from self-leadership is it prevents derailment. Now, what do I mean by derailment? Have any of you seen, I think we all have, hot shots, rising stars in our business? They take off with a bang. We get really excited about what they're going to do, and then they self-destruct. Have you seen that happen? You go, oh, they had so much potential, and then they disappear. They never fully achieve their true potential as a leader. Because why? They lack self-leadership. They had the potential there, but they didn't have the self-leadership to help them finish the journey, help them go to the end of the line. Daniel Goleman, I'm not sure if you've heard of him or not, he's the author of Emotional Intelligence and a number of books and studies on this. In fact, I consider him kind of the world leader on the subject of emotional intelligence. He said this, he did an extensive study on leadership derailment. And he pointed this out. He said, when I compared star performers with average ones in senior leadership, he said nearly 90% of the difference in their profiles was attributed to emotional intelligence factors rather than cognitive abilities. Meaning, it's one thing to be smart in a subject and to know cognitively the ins and outs of the compensation plan, product science, or what have you. But if we lack the emotional intelligence as a leader, as a self-leader, then we will only go so far. We will only experience so much. Okay, and we don't want to be one of those rising stars that self-destructs or derails our own success because we lack the emotional intelligence. We want both. We want cognitive skill, without a doubt, but we also need to have the emotional intelligence to back it up and give it the legs to go the full distance. Yeah. So the last point that I think is a key benefit here in having self-leadership is that it empowers us to leave the kind of legacy that we want to leave. Here's a startling and unfortunate truth, ladies and gents, and that is, whether we like it or not, whether we're good or bad leaders, we are going to be leaving a legacy. The question is, what kind of legacy are we leaving? We all want to leave a legacy, don't we? That's part of why we're here. That's why we're part of the wellness community. That's part of why we love NECAM, is the capacity to leave a legacy. But what legacy are we leaving? Have we stopped to think whether or not right now we're leaving one? We often use that language in the context of an aspirational future state. But let's draw that back to the present moment for a sec and say, what legacy is mine right now that I am leaving behind? How am I performing? Let's have a quick gut check time and say, what does my legacy look like? Yeah. And what do I mean by legacy? I believe the legacy here is the imprint on our organization. And that can be upline, downline, cross line, whichever line here. Yeah. Don't immediately jump to my legacy is represented by my rank or my paycheck. There are other ways to leave a legacy. There are certain things we may want and we may feel deficient at right now. They're works in progress. Yeah, but there are other ways that we measure our existing legacy. And that's through our beliefs, our values, our attitudes, and our actions. And how does that affect others? And I believe that we can be leaving a great legacy when we learn how to truly be self-directed leaders, when we let our values, our beliefs, and our attitudes leave a firm imprint on those around us. Yeah, that's what empowers others a lot. And that's what helps us to really make a difference. So as we wrap up today, I want to leave just two final thoughts when it comes to self-leadership. First, self-leadership, the subject that we've talked about today, it's an ongoing process of self-reflection. That's critical to understand. It's an ongoing process of self-reflection. As Lowney writes, let me just quote what he said, self-awareness is no one-time project, no less essential than the initial assessment of one's strengths, weaknesses, values, and worldview is an ongoing everyday habit of self-reflection, the examine. It's our need to self-examine on a consistent daily basis. My invitation to you today is to make a part of your day, carve out a few minutes on a daily basis for self-examination, self-reflection on this critical subject of self-leadership. How am I doing? Where can I improve? What can I do differently? I believe that we can significantly accelerate our leadership skills through this one practice of regular, consistent self-examination. I've grown at the fastest rates when I've been in the practice and habit of self-examination. When I let that drop and I get complacent, then my speed of growth diminishes or halts. We don't want that to happen. We want to be on a perpetual journey of growth and improvement that will happen best through self-reflection, because that gives us a chance then to honestly evaluate and then meaningfully make changes. The second point is this. Continual self-leadership is a mark of leadership maturity. If we want to be mature leaders, established leaders, not just in tenure, but as real leaders, then self-leadership needs to be an important ingredient in what we do and who we are. There are some people, unfortunately, that never mature as leaders. They've had leadership rank, position, title, responsibility for years, but they don't mature. They remain insecure and self-defeating, or delinquent in their leadership skills and development. And that's a tragedy. That can change with self-reflection. Tenure doesn't equate to greatness. Yeah. But self-reflection, persistence, and evolution in our self-leadership does. If we want to be mature, responsible, great leaders, we need to reflect inwardly and know ourselves better. And then when we know ourselves better, we will see others better. What we don't want to be is saying the same stuff because it's popular or convenient. We want to do what is right. and be what is right and make the greatest difference for good because it is right. Yeah. And we do that through self-leadership. So like I said, in conclusion, my invitation today is simply for us to add a moment of self-reflection. Make that moment count. Don't do it passively or half-heartedly. If you really want to grow, if you really want to leave a legacy, if you really want to see the world better and have greater hope in the future of what you have in your hands with Nikan and with everything that is good in your life, self-reflection, self-leadership, self-government is the way forward. And when we do that, we are better positioned to influence others better, empower them, strengthen them, and as a collective, as a worldwide wellness community, we can expand and grow and become something far greater. I know this to be true. And I promise you that moments taken on a daily basis for self-reflection will be transformative. I promise you that. So thank you very much.
Ben, could I add something, please?
Please.
I'm actually, my heart's just racing. When the total quality improvement, the Deming Kaizen was introduced into healthcare, you know, you can imagine different departments, all their views, pointing fingers. And so we went through, there was an acronym, SWOT analysis, which is taught in business schools too: strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. And the one thing that I always remembered, because of all this conflict when we would meet around quality improvement of patient care or whatever, was when you're pointing a finger, there's always three fingers pointing back at you. And it was the Kaizen model, which Deming took to Japan. So I was so excited when the President's Club kind of concept was changed to Team Kaizen. And just listening to you today, the virtual HBM, and now this 5-part series on leadership, and the essence, I mean, what really drew me to making my decision was seeing that balance wheel and the humans being more, because I hadn't experienced that with the devolution and the downsizing and the restructure. We were given a lot of the lip service to the total quality improvement, but it just kept becoming more dehumanizing to what was happening to quality patient care. And so this is so timely today. Again, the sequel after the discussion for those that were on the Align with Success last night. And since the quarantine and what's happening particularly in the United States with race relations, our concept of a global community is so critical. And the need to grow in this area, I'm just kind of feeling whatever inside, and I just wanted to share that. I mean, just even that connection to the Luis's emphasis on personal development, yours, Mike's on the mind, and other leaders. I mean, those of us that have stayed, you're absolutely correct. It hasn't been on rank or income. It's because you know, that humans being more just comes out through our pores. And so I want to thank you particularly for your heart in the way that you express this theory today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me, I'm going to stop the recording here and say thank you to our Mexican team for watching this. So thank you. And I hope this has been a great help for you as well.